Jae-young Kim sat alone at the far end of the cafeteria table. The large room buzzed with the voices of hundreds of students, but no one sat near her. She poked at her food tray with little interest. The nutrient cubes might be healthy, but they tasted like nothing. A burst of laughter made her look up. Across the room, Neri stood surrounded by her usual group. The tall Andromean girl's skin shimmered with a slight purple glow when she moved. Next to her, Taiho nodded eagerly at whatever Neri was saying. When they noticed Jae-young looking their way, Neri whispered something that made the whole group laugh harder. Jae-young looked down quickly. She knew what they were laughing about. Her, the human girl. The only pure human in the entire New Seoul Interplanetary Academy. Primitive genetics, they called her, as if being human was something to be ashamed of. Jae-young gathered her tray and stood up. She didn't need to sit here and be their entertainment. The recycling unit beeped as she dumped her half-eaten lunch. The hallway was quieter, and she welcomed the break from the stairs. Her locker was at the end of the east wing, away from most of the others. As she turned the corner, her steps slowed. Something was wrong. Even from a distance, she could see the glowing green letters covering her locker door. Obsolete species. The nano paint dripped down the metal surface, still wet. Someone had just done this. Jae-young looked around, but the hallway was empty. Her throat tightened as she approached the locker. The paint would be nearly impossible to remove without special tools. Just ignore it, she whispered to herself. It doesn't matter. But it did matter. It always mattered, no matter how many times she told herself it didn't. She pressed her thumb against the lock panel. Nothing happened. They had tampered with that too. She tried again, pressing harder. Need some help with that? Jae-young jumped at the voice. The school's maintenance bot hovered a few feet away, its service lights blinking. Yes, please, she said. My locker won't open. The bot scanned the locker, then the graffiti. Vandalism detected. This incident will be reported. Would you like me to clean the surface now? Yes, thank you. As the bot sprayed solvent on her locker, Jae-young felt a sharp pain behind her eyes. These headaches had been getting worse lately. The pain came in waves, always followed by strange flashes of something. Images she couldn't quite grasp. The bot finished cleaning and fixing her lock. Jae-young grabbed her history tablet and hurried to her next class. She was already late. History of Galactic Civilizations was taught by Mr. Lee, one of the few teachers who treated Jae-young like any other student. Today they were studying the Nexus Wars, a series of battles that had happened over 200 years ago. The Cadian Empire's expansion was finally stopped by the human defense fleet, Mr. Lee was saying as Jae-young slipped into her seat. Though greatly outnumbered, the human forces managed an unexpected victory. On the big screen at the front of the room, images of massive space battles played out. Ships exploded in silence. Lasers cut through the darkness of space. Jae-young stared at the screen. The headache was back, stronger now. In her mind, she saw the battle from a different angle. Not from above, but from inside a ship. She could almost feel the vibration of engines, hear voices shouting orders. Jae-young, are you with us? Mr. Lee's voice pulled her back. The entire class was looking at her. She realized she had stood up without meaning to. I'm sorry, she said, feeling her face grow hot. May I go to the nurse? I have a headache. Mr. Lee nodded, concern in his eyes. As Jae-young walked out, she heard Taiho whisper, humans are so fragile. She made it to the hallway before another pain hit. This one brought her to her knees. For just a second, she wasn't Jae-young anymore. She was someone else. Someone standing on the bridge of a massive ship, giving orders as stars exploded around her. Then it was gone, leaving her confused and breathless on the hallway floor. What was happening to her? Jae-young woke up with a gasp. Her heart raced as she tried to hold on to the images from her dream. A large ship, stars exploding, people shouting, but the pictures faded quickly, like water through her fingers. This was the third night in a row she had these dreams. Each time, they felt more real than normal dreams should. She got out of bed and walked to the bathroom. The mirror showed dark circles under her eyes. She splashed cold water on her face. "Jae-yun, are you up already?" Her father's voice called from downstairs. "Yes, Dad. Coming." Dr. Hyun-ki Kim sat at the kitchen table, reading something on his tablet. He looked up when Jae-yun entered and frowned slightly. "You look tired. More bad dreams?" Jae-yun nodded as she poured herself a bowl of nutrient flakes. "They feel so real. I see battleships and hear explosions. And I feel important, like people are waiting for me to tell them what to do." Her father's face changed. He looked worried for a moment before forcing a smile. "It's just stress from school. Those dreams don't mean anything." "But what if?" "Enough about dreams," he cut her off too quickly. "You'll be late for school." Jae-yun wanted to ask more questions. Her father never cut her off like that. But he had already gone back to reading his tablet. The school hallways were crowded as usual. Jae-yun kept her head down, trying to avoid attention. It didn't work. "Well, if it isn't the obsolete model," Tae-ho said loudly as she passed. His group of friends laughed. Jae-yun walked faster, but Tae-ho stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "I heard humans were once considered dangerous," he said. "Hard to believe when looking at you." Jae-yun tried to step around him, but he moved to block her again. That's when someone else spoke. "Move." The voice was quiet but firm. Jae-yun turned to see a boy she didn't recognize. He had unusual silver eyes that seemed to glow slightly. "Mind your own business, new kid," Tae-ho said, but he sounded less sure of himself. "She is my business," the boy said. "Move now." Something in his voice made Tae-ho step aside. The boy nodded to Jae-yun and motioned for her to follow him. "Thanks," Jae-yun said when they were away from the group. "I'm Jae-yun." "I know who you are," the boy said. "My name is Do-yun. I transferred here last week." Jae-yun studied him. There was something strange about him, but she couldn't put her finger on what it was. "What did you mean, I'm your business?" she asked. Do-yun just smiled slightly. "We should get to class." In advanced biology, the teacher was explaining the unique features of Rigelian body systems. Their circulatory system uses copper instead of iron, which is why their blood appears green rather than red, Mr. Hejun said. And their tertiary pulse nodes require. "The tertiary pulse nodes aren't for circulation," Jae-yun said, then stopped, surprised at herself. Where had that come from? The whole class turned to look at her. Mr. Hejun raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me." Jae-yun felt her face grow hot, but the words kept coming. Rigelian tertiary nodes serve as backup neural processors. They're part of the nervous system, not the circulatory system. That's why Rigelian field medics carry dual-spectrum neural stabilizers for battlefield injuries. The room fell silent. Mr. Hejun stared at her with an odd expression. "That's correct, Jae-yun. But that information isn't in your textbook. Where did you learn that?" Jae-yun shook her head slowly. I don't know." After class, Mr. Hejun asked her to stay behind. As the other students filed out, Jae-yun noticed Do-yun watching her with increased interest. "Jae-yun," Mr. Hejun said quietly when they were alone, "what you said about Rigelian physiology is advanced medical knowledge. Even I only learned it during my specialized xenobiology training." "I'm sorry," Jae-yun said. "I don't know how I knew that. It just came out." Mr. Hejun studied her face for a long moment. "Has anything else strange happened to you recently? Dreams, perhaps, or headaches?" Jae-yun's eyes widened. "How did you know about my dreams?" Instead of answering, Mr. Hejun touched something on his wrist. A small blue light blinked 3 times. "I think," he said carefully, "that we need to talk about the school field trip to the Lunar Historical Museum tomorrow." It's going to be very important for you to attend. The Lunar Historical Museum was the largest building on the moon. It stood tall and white against the gray lunar landscape. Jai-yun pressed her face to the transport window as they approached. Something about this place felt important, but she didn't know why. Excited about old war stuff, Du-yun had appeared beside her seat. He hadn't spoken to her since defending her in the hallway yesterday. I guess so, Jai-yun said. Have you been here before? Du-yun shook his head. No, but I've heard a lot about it. His silver eyes seemed to study her closely, especially the Galactic Unification Wars exhibit. The transport landed smoothly in the visitor's dock. Mr. Hejun led the class through tall glass doors into the main hall. The ceiling rose high above them, showing stars and planets in perfect detail. Stay together, Mr. Hejun instructed. We'll start with the early space exploration section and work our way to modern times. Jai-yun followed the group, but she felt pulled in a different direction. A sign on the far wall read Galactic Unification Wars, Level 3. The same wars Du-yun had mentioned. For 2 hours, the class moved slowly through exhibits about the first moon landing, the Mars colonies, and first contact with alien species. Jai-yun tried to pay attention, but her headache was back, worse than before. Finally, they reached Level 3. The lights were dimmer here. Large screens showed images of space battles. In the center of the room stood a life-sized hologram of a massive battleship. The UES Defender, the museum guide explained. The flagship of the human defense fleet during the Nexus Wars. Its commander, Admiral Song-ha, led the final battle against the Cadian Empire. Jai-yun stared at the ship. The pain in her head grew sharper. She knew this ship. She knew every hall, every room, every control panel. How was that possible? The guide activated another hologram. A woman in a dark uniform appeared. She had short black hair and stern eyes. Admiral Song-ha, the guide said, is considered the greatest military leader in human history. Her strategies defeated an enemy that was technologically superior in every way. Jai-yun couldn't breathe. The woman in the hologram, her face, it was like looking in a mirror, but older, harder. The room began to spin. Images flashed in Jai-yun's mind, not dreams this time, but memories. Standing on a bridge, giving orders, watching planets burn. Jai-yun. Someone was calling her name, but it sounded far away. She fell to her knees. The last thing she saw was Du-yun rushing toward her, followed by Mr. Hejun. Then everything went black. Jai-yun woke up in a small white room. Medical equipment beeped softly nearby. Du-yun sat in a chair beside her bed. What happened? She asked, her mouth dry. You had a seizure, Du-yun said, but it wasn't a normal seizure. What do you mean? Du-yun leaned closer. Your neural implant is failing. My what? I don't have an implant. Yes, you do. It was put there to block your memories. Du-yun's voice was low and urgent. Jai-yun, I'm part of your protection detail. I've been watching over you for months. Protection from what? Before he could answer, an alarm started blaring. Red lights flashed in the hallway outside. Mr. Hejun burst into the room. We need to move. Now. They found her. Who's found me? Jai-yun demanded, sitting up. What's happening? No time to explain, Mr. Hejun said. He pressed something into her hand, a small metal disc with strange symbols. Keep this with you. Don't lose it. He led them to a door marked Staff Only and punched in a code. The door opened to reveal a narrow maintenance tunnel. This way, he said, quickly. As they hurried through the tunnel, Jai-yun heard the sound of engines from above. Ships landing. Who are you people? She asked. And who am I really? Du-yun glanced at her as they ran. Your father can explain better than we can. My father. They emerged from the tunnel into a small hangar. A sleek ship waited there with its ramp down. Dr. Hyun-ki Kim stood at the bottom, his face grim. Dad, Jai-yun whispered. "What's going on?" "I'm sorry, Jai-yun," he said. "I've kept the truth from you for too long. But now we have no choice." He held out his hand. "It's time for Admiral Song to return." Jai-yun backed away from her father. "This is crazy. I'm just a high school student." "Get in the ship," Dr. Kim said firmly. "They're coming." Through the open hangar door, Jai-yun saw 3 black ships landing in the distance. They didn't look like normal transport ships. They looked like hunters. She followed her father up the ramp. The inside of the ship was small but advanced. Du-yun went straight to the controls and started pressing buttons. Mr. Hejun closed the ramp behind them. "Shields up," Du-yun said. "Engine at full power." The ship lifted off smoothly. Through the window, Jai-yun watched the museum grow smaller. The black ships turned toward them. "They'd spotted us," Mr. Hejun said. "Engaging stealth mode," Du-yun replied. He pressed a large blue button. The view outside the window changed slightly, like they were looking through water. Dr. Kim led Jai-yun to a small room in the back of the ship. A chair with strange equipment stood in the center. "Sit down," he said. "It's time you learned the truth." Jai-yun sat nervously. The chair felt oddly familiar. "This will hurt," her father warned. "But it will help your memories return faster." He placed a metal band around her head. It felt cold against her skin. "What memories?" Jai-yun asked. "Dad, you're scaring me." "I'm not really your father," Dr. Kim said softly. "I've been your guardian. My job was to protect you until it was safe for you to remember." Before Jai-yun could reply, he turned on the device. Pain shot through her head, but it was different from her headaches. This pain cleared her mind instead of clouding it. And then the memories came. She saw herself, but older, wearing a uniform with stars on the collar, standing on the bridge of a massive ship, the UES Defender. People calling her Admiral Song-ah and following her orders without question. She saw battles, planets burning, ships exploding, decisions that cost thousands of lives but saved millions more. She saw the final battle against the Cadian Empire, whose ships were faster and stronger than anything humans had built. She saw herself giving the order to deploy a terrible weapon, one that tore open space itself. The memories kept coming. 200 years of history poured into her mind in minutes. When it finally stopped, Jai-yun gasped for breath. "Now you know," Dr. Kim said. "You are Admiral Song-ah, the hero of the Nexus Wars." Jai-yun's hands shook. "But how?" "That was 200 years ago. After the war," Dr. Kim explained, "you were broken by what you had seen and done. You chose to have your consciousness preserved and your memories suppressed. You wanted to be reborn as a normal girl, to live a peaceful life." "I'm not 16, Jai-yun asked. "Your body is 16, but your true self is over 200 years old." Du-yun entered the room. He bowed slightly to Jai-yun, something he had never done before. "Admiral," he said respectfully, "we're safe for now. We've entered the asteroid belt. Their sensors can't find us here." "Don't call me that," Jai-yun said quickly. "I'm not. I can't be." "You are," Du-yun insisted. "And we need you to be. My great-grandfather served under you as your second in command. Before he died, he made our family swear to protect you. For generations, we've been waiting for your return." Jai-yun felt the weight of their expectations crushing her. Why now? Why is this happening? Dr. Kim's face darkened. Because the Cadian Empire never truly died. They'd been hiding, rebuilding their forces. Now they're back, and their first goal is to find and kill Admiral Song-ah, the only human who ever defeated them. "But I'm just a girl," Jai-yun whispered. "No," Dr. Kim said. "You're the greatest military leader Earth has ever known. And right now, you're humanity's only hope." The ship shook violently. Jai-yun grabbed the wall to stay upright. "They found us," Mr. Hejun called from the front of the ship. 3 Cadian warships approaching fast. Jai-yun rushed to the control room. On the main screen, she could see the 3 black ships closing in. Their shapes were sleek and deadly, like sharks in space. "How did they find us?" Dr. Kim asked. "Our stealth systems should hide us." "They must have new tracking technology," Du-yun said, his hands moving quickly over the controls. "I can't shake them." Jai-yun stared at the screen. Without thinking, she reached over Du-yun and pressed a series of buttons. "What are you doing?" he asked, surprised. "The asteroid belt has magnetic fields that can mask our heat signature," Jai-yun said. She didn't know how she knew this. The words just came out. "Head for the large cluster at Section 7. Du-yun hesitated, then followed her instructions. The ship turned sharply toward a dense group of asteroids. "That's too dangerous," Mr. Hejun warned. "We could crash." "Trust me," Jai-yun said. Her voice sounded different, more commanding. For a moment, she felt like Admiral Song-ha was speaking through her. The ship weaved between massive rocks. The black ships followed, but more slowly. "It's working," Du-yun said. "They're falling behind." Jai-yun pointed to a particularly large asteroid. "Hide behind that one, and cut power to all systems except life support." Again, they followed her orders. The ship went dark and quiet. They drifted silently behind the asteroid. Minutes passed. On the screen, they watched the Cadian ships search the area, then move on. "You did it," Dr. Kim said, looking at Jai-yun with new respect. Jai-yun felt strange. Part of her was still the scared high school girl. But another part, a new part, or maybe a very old part, felt calm and focused. "We need to understand what we're facing," she said. "Tell me more about these Cadians. Why are Neri and Taiho working for them?" Dr. Kim looked surprised. "What makes you think your classmates are involved?" "The way they targeted me specifically. The way Neri always watched me." Jai-yun frowned. "And Taiho's behavior changed in the last few months. He became more aggressive toward me." "You're right," Mr. Hejun said. "They are Cadian agents. They were planted at the school to watch you." "So my whole life has been a lie?" Jai-yun asked, anger rising in her voice. "Not a lie," Dr. Kim said gently. "A protection. After the war, you chose this life. You wanted peace." Jai-yun closed her eyes, trying to sort through her old and new memories. "I remember now. The weapon I used in the final battle. It killed millions, even Cadians who weren't fighting." Her voice broke. "I couldn't live with what I'd done." "You saved humanity," Du-yun said firmly. "The Cadians were destroying every human colony they found. They would have killed everyone." A sudden alarm blared through the ship. Red lights flashed. "Engine damage," Du-yun reported. "We must have hit something in the asteroid field. We're losing power. Can we repair it?" Jai-yun asked. Du-yun shook his head. "Not here. We need to land somewhere." Jai-yun studied the navigation map. "There's a mining colony on Saturn's largest moon. We can make it there." As they limped toward the colony, Jai-yun felt the weight of her past life pressing down on her. She wasn't just Jai-yun Kim anymore. She was Admiral Song-ha with the knowledge and skills of a legendary commander. The same commander who had once made a choice that destroyed millions of lives. And now she might have to make difficult choices again. The mining colony grew larger in their view screen. Behind them, in the darkness of space, 3 black ships changed course. The hunters had found their prey again. The mining colony looked like a collection of metal bubbles stuck to the moon's surface. Their damaged ship landed roughly on a small platform. Alarms blared as smoke filled the control room. "Everyone out," Jai-yun commanded. The engine could explode. They rushed down the exit ramp. Cold air hit Jai-yun's face as her feet touched the ground. The sky above was dark, filled with the rings of Saturn. 5 people in mining uniforms approached, holding weapons. "Identify yourselves," ordered a tall woman at the front. Dr. Kim stepped forward. We're peaceful travelers. Our ship was damaged. We need help. The woman studied them carefully. Then her eyes landed on Jai-yun. She gasped and lowered her weapon. It can't be, she whispered. Admiral Songa. Jai-yun tensed. How do you know who I am? The woman bowed slightly. I am Sun Young. Come with me quickly. It's not safe to talk here. Sun Young led them through a series of tunnels into the heart of the colony. They entered a large room filled with maps, screens, and communication equipment. About 20 people worked at various stations. All activity stopped when Jai-yun walked in. Everyone, Sun Young announced. The Admiral has returned. An old man approached Jai-yun. His hand shook as he reached for hers. Is it really you? After all these years. Jai-yun didn't recognize him, but Admiral Songha's memories did. Ensign Min. From the Battle of Proxima Centauri. The old man's eyes filled with tears. You remember, I was just a young officer then. Now I'm an old man, but I never forgot you. What is this place? Jai-yun asked, looking around. The Resistance, Sun Young explained. We've been preparing for years. We knew the Cadians would return someday. She led Jai-yun to a large screen showing a map of the solar system. Red dots marked various locations. Cadian agents have infiltrated Earth's government, military, and schools, Sun Young said. They've been looking for you for a long time. Why me? Jai-yun asked. I'm just one person. Because you're the only one who ever defeated them, Dr. Kim said. They fear you more than any weapon. Sun Young nodded. And they should. After the Nexus Wars, many of your officers followed your example. They had their memories suppressed and were reborn as regular people. You mean there are others like me? Yes. We've been finding them, one by one. But you were the most important and the most carefully hidden. Jai-yun sat down, overwhelmed. This is too much. A few days ago, I was just a high school student worried about class assignments. And now you're our best hope for survival, Sun Young said simply. Du-yun, who had been quietly monitoring communications, suddenly called out, 3 ships approaching the colony. Cadian design. They'd followed us here, Mr. Hejun said. We've put these people in danger. No, Sun Young said firmly. This is what we've been waiting for. A chance to fight back. She turned to Jai-yun. Admiral, we need your leadership. What are your orders? Everyone in the room looked at Jai-yun. She felt their hopes and expectations pressing down on her. Part of her wanted to run and hide. She never asked for this responsibility again. But deep inside, Admiral Songha's voice spoke clearly. These people need you. Earth needs you. Jai-yun stood up straight. When she spoke, her voice was steady and strong. Prepare your defenses. I need to see your weapons, your ships, and your personnel. Du-yun, help repair our ship. Dr. Kim, gather all the intelligence we have on current Cadian technology. She turned to Sun Young. And I need to know everything about the Resistance Network. If we're going to fight back, we need every advantage. For the first time since discovering her true identity, Jai-yun felt a sense of purpose. She might not have chosen this life, but she would not run from it. The Cadians were coming, and this time, Admiral Song, it would be ready for them. 3 days passed. The Cadian ships circled the mining colony, but did not attack. They were waiting for something. Jai-yun stood in the control room, studying maps and reports. The more she learned, the more worried she became. Their main base is here, she said, pointing to a spot on the map, under New Seoul Academy. Sun Young looked surprised. Your school? Are you sure? Jai-yun nodded. It makes sense now. Why so many alien students were there. Why Nari and Taeho watched me so closely. She zoomed in on the map. The school was built over an old military bunker. The Cadians must be using it. What are they planning? Dr. Kim asked. An invasion, Jai-yun said grimly. They've been gathering forces for years. When they're ready, they'll attack Earth all at once." The room fell silent. Finally, Du Yun spoke up. "What can we do? The resistance is small. We don't have enough ships or weapons to fight their entire fleet." Jia Yun stared at the map, her mind racing. Admiral Song has tactical genius combined with Jia Yun's fresh perspective. "We need to stop them before they can start the invasion," she said. "We need to destroy their base." "That's impossible," Mr. Hajun argued. "The base is on Earth, surrounded by innocent people." "Not impossible," Jia Yun countered. "Just difficult." She pointed to the school on the map. "I know that building better than anyone. Every hallway, every room, every secret passage." "You want to go back?" Dr. Kim looked alarmed. "That's too dangerous. You're too important to risk." Jia Yun smiled slightly. "I'm not just Admiral Songa. I'm also Jia Yun Kim, a teenage girl who spent years being invisible in that school. I know how to move around without being noticed." She turned to Sun Young. "What forces can you spare?" "We have 3 small ships and 20 trained fighters," Sun Young replied. "Plus whatever weapons we can carry." "That's enough," Jia Yun said. "We don't need an army. We need a small team that can get in and out quickly." The plan came together over the next few hours. Jia Yun would leave a team of 6 people back to Earth. They would enter the school through maintenance tunnels that Jia Yun remembered from her time as a student. Once inside, they would plant explosives at key points in the Cadian base. As they prepared, Sun Young brought Jia Yun to a small room at the back of the complex. "There's something you should see," she said, activating a screen on the wall. A woman's face appeared. She had short black hair and stern eyes. Admiral Songha, as she had been 200 years ago. "If you're watching this," the recording said, "then you are me, reborn. And if you've been awakened, it means the Cadians have returned." Jia Yun stared at her former self in wonder. "I don't know what kind of person you've become," the Admiral continued, "but I want you to understand why I chose to forget. After the final battle, I couldn't live with what I'd done. The weapon I used killed millions. Some were enemies, but many were innocent." The Admiral's eyes showed deep pain. "I chose rebirth to escape that guilt, to have a chance at a normal life. But I also left this message because I knew the Cadians might return someday." She leaned closer to the camera. "Whatever you decide to do now must be your choice, not mine. Not what others expect of you. Yours. Remember that." The recording ended. Jia Yun wiped away tears she hadn't realized were falling. "Are you all right?" Sun Young asked softly. "Yes," Jia Yun said. "I needed to hear that." She returned to the control room where the team was waiting. They looked to her for leadership, not because she was Admiral Songha, but because she had proven herself in the past 3 days. "Our ship leaves in 1 hour," she announced. "We're going back to New Seoul." The small ship landed quietly in a forest outside New Seoul. It was night, and the city lights glowed in the distance. Jia Yun led her team through the trees. They wore dark clothes and carried small packs with weapons and explosives. "The school is 2 kilometers ahead," Jia Yun whispered. "There's a maintenance entrance near the old sports field." They moved silently through the darkness. Jia Yun's heart beat fast. Part of her still couldn't believe she was doing this. A week ago, she had been a normal student. Now she was leading a mission to save Earth. The school building looked peaceful in the moonlight. Most of the windows were dark. Only a few security lights shone. "This way," Jia Yun said. She led them to a small metal door half hidden by bushes. "This leads to the maintenance tunnels." Du Yun used a device to unlock the door. They slipped inside and found themselves in a narrow concrete tunnel. Pipes and wires ran along the ceiling. "The main building is straight ahead," Jia Yun said. "But first we need to get to the sublevel. That's where the old bunker is." They followed the tunnel until they reached a junction. Jia Yun pointed to a ladder going down. "There. That leads to the lower levels." One by one, They climbed down the ladder. The air grew colder and damp. They turned on small lights attached to their wrists. "Be careful," Jae-yun warned. "There might be guards." They moved through the underground tunnels for what seemed like hours. Finally, they reached a large metal door. "This is it," Jae-yun whispered. "The entrance to the bunker." Do-yun scanned the door with his device. "Heavy security. This will take time to open." "We don't have time," Jae-yun said. She studied the control panel next to the door. Old memories guided her fingers as she entered a series of codes. The door slid open with a soft hiss. "How did you do that?" Sun Young asked, amazed. "This bunker was built during the First Nexus War," Jae-yun explained. Admiral Song ordered its construction. The emergency override codes are still the same." They entered a vast underground space filled with advanced technology. In the center stood a large tower-like structure with blue lights pulsing up and down its sides. "What is that?" Dr. Kim asked. "A quantum beacon," Jae-yun said, her voice tight with fear. "It can create a wormhole for ships to travel through. They're building a direct path for their invasion fleet." "We need to destroy it," Sun Young said. "Place the explosives at the base." As they moved toward the beacon, lights suddenly flooded the room. Alarms blared. "Intruders detected," a mechanical voice announced. "Run," Jae-yun shouted. "Place the explosives quickly." They scattered, running toward the beacon. Guards appeared from side doors, firing energy weapons. Jae-yun ducked behind a console, drawing her own weapon. "Jae-yun Kim," a familiar voice called out. "Or should I call you Admiral Song?" Neri stepped into view. She wore a sleek black uniform with the Cadian symbol on the chest. Her purple skin seemed to glow brighter with anger. "I knew there was something special about you," Neri said. "My father told me to watch for any sign that you were remembering your past." "Your father?" Jae-yun asked. "Commander Vel, leader of the Cadian forces in this system." Neri smiled coldly. "The man whose family you destroyed in the last war." Jae-yun saw her team being surrounded and captured one by one. Only Do-yun remained free, hiding behind equipment near the beacon. "You can't stop us," Neri said. "The beacon is almost ready. In 1 hour, our fleet will arrive. Earth will fall, just like all your colonies did before." Jae-yun stood slowly, hands raised. "You don't have to do this, Nari. The war ended centuries ago. Not for us," Nari hissed. "Not for those who lost everything." A movement caught Jae-yun's eye. Taiho was approaching from behind Nari, his weapon raised. "Nari, watch out," one of the guards shouted. But it was too late. Taiho fired, not at Jae-yun, but at the control panel for the beacon. The control panel sparked and smoked. The blue lights on the quantum beacon flickered. "Traitor!" Nari screamed at Taiho. "You're one of them." Taiho backed away, his weapon still raised. "I was never one of you. I've been working for Earth security for years." Chaos erupted. Jae-yun used the distraction to dive for cover. She signaled to Do-yun, who tossed her a small device, the detonator for the explosives they had managed to place. "It's damaged but not destroyed," Neri shouted, pointing to the beacon. "The signal was already sent. Our fleet knows the coordinates." A deep rumble shook the room. Dust fell from the ceiling. "Everyone out," Jae-yun commanded. "The structure is unstable." Her team fought their way to the exit. Jae-yun grabbed Taiho's arm as they ran. "Why did you help us?" she asked. "I was assigned to watch for Cadian activity," he explained between breaths. "I never expected to find you there too. When I realized who you were, I had to protect you." They reached the surface just as the first explosion rocked the building. Students and teachers were running outside in confusion. The ground shook beneath their feet. "We need to warn Earth's defense forces," Jae-yun said. "The Cadian fleet is coming." Taiho nodded. "I have direct access to Earth Command. They'll listen to me." He led them to a small building near the school. Inside was a secure communication station. Taiho entered a series of codes. "This is Agent Lee," he said into the microphone. "Security code Zeta 93. We have a Class 1 emergency." A stern face appeared on the screen. "General Park of Earth Defense Forces." "This better be important, Agent Lee," the general said. "Sir, I have Admiral Songha with me." The general's eyes widened. "That's impossible. Admiral Song had died 2 centuries ago." Jai Yun stepped forward. "General, I am Admiral Songha. My consciousness was preserved and reborn. I don't have time to explain everything. But Earth is in danger. The Cadian Empire has returned. Their fleet is on its way here now." "This is absurd," the general said. "The Cadians were defeated. The override code for Earth Defense Platform Alpha is Red Sun 749. Jai Yun interrupted. "That code was created by me and has never been shared with anyone below the rank of Fleet Admiral." The general fell silent, shocked. "Now will you listen to me?" Jai Yun asked. "Because we have less than 1 hour before the Cadian fleet arrives." In the next 30 minutes, Jai Yun explained everything to Earth's military leaders. She showed them the Cadian base under the school. She revealed their plan to use the quantum beacon to bypass Earth's defenses. "Our normal defense systems won't stop them," she explained. "But I have a plan." Using a mixture of Admiral Songha's tactical genius and Jai Yun's fresh thinking, she outlined a strategy. Earth's ships would appear to retreat, drawing the Cadians into a trap where hidden weapons platforms waited. "It's risky," General Park admitted, "but it might work." As Earth's forces prepared for battle, Jai Yun found a quiet moment alone. She felt torn between her 2 selves, the teenage girl and the ancient admiral. Dr. Kim found her staring out a window at the stars. "What will you do when this is over?" he asked gently. Jai Yun smiled. "I'm not sure. I can't go back to being just a student, but I don't want to be only Admiral Songha either." She turned to face him. "Maybe I can be something new, something that combines both parts of me." The alert system beeped. The Cadian fleet had been detected entering the solar system. "It's time," Jai Yun said. She walked with confidence to the command center. Officers much older than her teenage body stepped aside respectfully. At the main control panel, she took a deep breath and began giving orders. The battle for Earth had begun. And this time, Admiral Songha wasn't fighting just for victory. She was fighting for a future where Jai Yun Kim could live in peace. A future she would help build, not as a legend from the past, but as something new. Something that had never existed before. A human girl who had once ousted empires and would do so again.